But I don't care. It's for Murray. I can do it. I can do it for Murray.
We can all look a state for Murray. And with that wise wonder being said, hello everyone and welcome to a Failcast F1 podcast special where we are saluting the amazing man that was and still is and will continue to be Murray Walker. Alongside me, as always, is Mr. Definitely Zero himself.
I'm okay, mate. I'm gutted though. I was telling you before we went live. It's actually hit me harder than I thought it would. Actually, I was increasingly angry that he lived for over 20 years after quitting commentary, and we lost out on those 20 years. I'll get into this more in the actual stream, but I saw a video on YouTube of him 3 months ago, and the guy was just as Murray as ever, and we've lost 20 years of him. Beetlejuice, hello mate, very very good you could join us. Yes, I'm not dead. It was Simon who nearly died with his COVID, but you're alive, aren't you, Simon?
I am alive, thank you.
Just checking.
Just about.
So, just to talk everyone through what we're doing, we will be driving some Mansellmania 1992 Williams FW14Bs around Silverstone, obviously, in memory of Murray, and it'll be an all-classic grid of early 90s, late 80s cars. One-shot qualifying, 25% Grand Prix distance, damage is on, obviously, because otherwise it isn't fun. And we will be sharing with you our memories of the great man, a guy who I can say with certainty I would not be the fan of F1 I am today without. Oh, excellent. Beetlejuice watched the Damon Hill Murray Walker Pizza Hut commercial in his honour. That is such a great commercial. That has aged immaculately.
It has. That is the epitome of 90s stuff. Hello to Sam in the chat as well. He's just put I came across your content recently and didn't realise I'd find two people who loved F1 as much as me. So,
God bless you. God bless you.
Yeah, I think one of the things we were debating actually just before we was going live, do we go for this era of F1 or something slightly later? And although this gives a bigger grid and things like that, for me this was when the Murray Walker, maybe it's a very British thing, but I used to basically bully my parents to schedule the Sunday roast around when the F1 was, because we would then, well, my dad used to be a Formula 1 fan, so it would be dragged into like the smoky living room and it would be like, oh, go from the cigarette smoke to the TV, and you'd find like Murray Walker would be there in the corner and I'd be sitting there stuffing pudding watching the Grand Prix, and he was just you said it in a message through Instagram, he was the voice of Sunday afternoon, and long may that remain.
He truly was. I mean, I can't think of a public figure that was so integrated into the family life of people in the country. I really can't. I mean, I know there's like prolific entertainers, like Bruce Forsyth, for example, was, a national treasure as well. But none of them really compared to Murray. And actually Beetlejuice, that's fascinating to know. Beetlejuice says that even German language TV switched to Murray Walker commentary when Damon won the championship. I love that.
Oh wow.
I love that. So without further ado, shall we jump into one-shot qualifying, balls it up, and then we'll make a balls of the race as well, but with Murray forever in our hearts, and we can talk about our memories of the man himself. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind kicking us off.
Go for it. Whilst we drive like a Murrayism.
Yeah, because I remember the first Grand Prix I can remember sitting and watching with my grandparents was, I want to say it was Adelaide. And I'm trying to think of what year, but it was, oh Christ, what was it? It was before Alesi's debut, and he debuted 91, right?
90.
He debuted 90. Oh God, no, maybe Alesi was on the grid then, because I think I was around 4 or I was coming up on 4. And obviously I don't remember anything about the race at the time. I just remember the cars, the colours, the noise, and that soundtrack of Murray Walker. When I really became cognizant of watching F1 was probably 92 with Mansell and Mansell Mania, which really was like, I don't think we've had a phenomenon in Britain like that since, because I mean Damon Hill was my driver of choice, but his championship wasn't met with the same fanfare, was it really?
No, not nearly as much. Coulthard was completely overlooked. Scottish.
Yeah.
Discoursing. And then, because he was then looked over for Button, and then it was straight to Hamilton and Army. So, yeah.
But
no,
actually,
you're right. But nothing's ever really hit that fever dream of Mansell Mania.
No, it hasn't. And I'm kind of wondering, to some extent, why that is. Because I know Murray loved Damon Hill and would always advocate for him. And actually, something else you made me think about there by mentioning Jenson Button's name is that no one was really batting for Button the way he did. I remember him making a big deal about Button in that Williams in 2000. But anyway, we've already digressed off topic. So yeah, my earliest memories really are of the 92 championship, the whole thing around Mansell. And the thing that I think held my attention, because what I used to find when I was, really first getting into F1, is that I actually enjoyed the build-up more than the race. Because I wasn't at a point where I could appreciate the racecraft, right? What I enjoyed, what sucked me in, was the bit at the start where the camera's mulling up and down the grid, or you're looking at scenes from the helicopter. And, maybe they'd zoom in on a back of the grid car and the name of the driver and the engine and the team would pop up. Because normally you wouldn't see them in the Grand Prix, because early 90s F1 coverage was fucking atrocious for giving you an overview of who was where and what they were doing.
True.
And Murray would talk about what was going on. And he'd have all this background information. And it's stuff that, if I repeated it, would sound super mundane. Bravo on your lap, by the way, sir. Bravo. You said you were going to be shit, but you lied to me.
I still think I will be. I can't string 2 laps together, for goodness sake.
It's not going to be a very compelling race, I'm afraid, viewers, but it's not really about that.
No.
Not that Mansell didn't, but Hill's championship felt satisfying to non-British people as well. I'm interested to hear you say that, Beetlejuice, because Damon Hill's career has always been something that's mystified me, and it's something that we're going to go into more depth over the course of the Murray Memorial stream. Because obviously, I don't think any driver is more associated with Murray, perhaps other than Schumacher. Because I found that really interesting as well, and it's something else we will touch on, how Murray could be the biggest Damon Hill fan in the world and have such deep respect and admiration for Schumacher at the same time, which I think marked him out as a man of genuine quality. But back to it. He was sort of instantaneously engaging.
Yes, and I think one of the things that pulls me from that is that it's because his enthusiasm was infectious and would cross the boundaries of whether he was technically minded, racing minded, just an onlooker kind of getting in. He had a way with words that meant that it crossed all sections, so that you felt included and brought along for his childish enthusiasm way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's something that I genuinely miss, because it's rare these days that you get... Oh, shit, I've immediately spun.
You've...
Sorry, Murray. He drove into me as well, the arsehole.
Was that 4 lights, 5 laps, and then straight off into...
But it's all right. It gives us something to watch now, because I have to catch you guys up and fight my way through the field of slower cars. So
I feel like I want to put in the 1998 Spa commentary. This is the worst start crime crash I've seen in my life. Where he comes in with that as Coulthard eliminates everyone.
We're going to get so deep into Murrayisms later, because there's some that I will forever adore.
I think I can think of one you're going to pull out of the hat.
Yeah. But yeah, getting back to the man himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
The nostalgia I have for my childhood, he's intrinsically woven into it, even before I was able to enjoy a race as a race. And like, even though no one in my family was actually an F1 fan, right? I mean, none of them. My grandparents weren't F1 fans. We watched every Grand Prix, but no one ever watched it. It was just to have Murray on, I think. Like, I mean, I was too young to question it. It was just the way things were. The family met on a Sunday afternoon every week without fail at my grandparents' house. We had roast beef and Yorkshire puddings and gravy and roast potatoes and all that good stuff. And just part of that was Country File, that stupid politics show with a crocodile made to look like Big Ben. Whatever that show was called. You'll remember what I mean, Simon. And
I think so.
And then after that, it would be the Grand Prix. And it always, I mean, even though the races took took place at different places all over the world at different times, back in the 90s, it was always on sort of early afternoon, regardless of where the race was or when it was held.
1 o'clock start. And one of the things actually that came out from it was an interview with Ted Kravitz. He said that Murray Walker used to pretend that he was actually not in the studio and at the racetrack. And he'd be busy there talking about how hot it was in the box and stuff like that, and they'd be looking at him and saying, "What?" Because it wasn't live then, so you'd have to kind of inject a semi-pretend live in, if that makes sense. He was so good at it.
I'd love that he would do that, though.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Because that makes his reaction seem all the more authentic at the time, but it also makes his reaction in reality somehow more wholesome. Because he was, I don't know if he recorded the commentary after the fact, but if he did, I mean, that's phenomenal, right? Because presumably he already knew the result.
I don't know if they commentated as live and then it went out later or not. I have no idea. Because some stuff is like the Channel 4 stuff that they get now is recorded as live and is done like put out later. So maybe it was like that at the time. I don't know, but fascinating.
And yeah, I mean, I've seen the clips as well, right, of him standing and being all animated, and people use the word quite a lot to describe his sort of enthusiasm as almost childlike, and I can kind of get that, because here we were looking at, by the time he retired, he was already in his 70s. Here you were, a 70-year-old man with just such excitement and energy in his voice and a genuine love of what he was doing, and he was bouncing up and down. And I mean, I remember towards the end of his career, right, he was taking rides in F1 cars. Do you remember? He got strapped in and driven by Martin Brundle, I think, at Australia 98.
Yeah, in the two-seater, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I'm so glad he got to have that experience. If I can think of anybody who deserved it, it was him. And his commentary for that race, as I recall, was all the more passionate for it, because suddenly he could describe, this is how it feels. I'm struggling to get past this Jordan. I can feel he's gonna try and murder me if I try and get by. And Murray would not approve of that.
No.
Now, speaking of that, that's something else that many people have commented on, and I kind of agree with. He was never aggressive in his criticism of drivers. Martin Brundle said disapproving is the correct word, and I actually really agree with that.
Yes.
And that, how it's somehow worse. You know how that's somehow worse? People say, when your parents say, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed, it hurts more.
Yes.
Can you think of anything worse than, like, disappointing Murray Walker?
Yeah,
the nation's granddad.
Up there with, I think you said it as well in a comments. It's literally him and Sir David Attenborough would be the only kind of person I could imagine on the same type of plane of existence.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I said to you. I now have to go to war with God. Like, he started it.
This year.
Take whoever you want, but Murray and David Attenborough, they are off limits, and he's broken the covenant. So, sorry, but someone's going to have to put God in his place. It's just unacceptable.
I shall tweet him.
But yeah, when we bounce back to you now, what are your earliest memories of Murray in F1?
So my earliest memories of, I think I'm a couple of years older than ye.
But you don't look it.
It's all that Photoshop and nip and tucks. And the amount of birthday cake I've been eating. It's my birthday tomorrow, so I'm a bit like proper picking it out. And yeah, so where my earliest memories will be late 80s is when I kind of was pulled into F1. So F1 was always in the house, and it was always there on a Sunday in the background. I always paid attention of it, and one of the weirdest things and collections that I've got of like old time toys was, maybe this says more about the fact that we were just poor, but I had pieces of paper torn up with drivers' names on, and that's how I know when I started. So it would have been 1988. And I used to race them around on the bedroom or living room floor, like with like blocks of like cars and stuff, pretending that they were racing. No idea who like was actually doing what, where, and when. And I'd like commentate over the top because I was clearly murried up by the time I'd got there. And so I don't have like specific memories of that time, but I remember finding like all of his voice exciting and interesting, and just being enthused. And I think the reason why Mansellmania kind of took off and that kind of era worked so well is it was just before you start to have diversification of media channels. And so I don't think because you only had 4 channels, maybe 5 if Sky TV was up and running by then. And so you had that or the radio, but then Murray, I think, was on the radio anyway, so you couldn't kind of escape him from wherever you went.
He was ubiquitous.
Yeah. And he was also... Oh, sorry, go.
Sorry, I just want to cut in there to say you and Beetlejuice have something in common, because he's saying he did the same thing. He built tracks out of toothpicks and Mikado sticks, and points out that Michael Schumacher had horrible luck with mechanical failures in his living room. Good. Couldn't happen to a nicer man. Sorry, carry on, Simon.
RNG is strong in Beetlejuice's living room. Yeah, so that's kind of why I think that was so big. But also, it wasn't just that. He went wider. So it wasn't just Formula One that we would be watching. It would be BTCC. And who was the voice of that? Murray. So he kind of came with us, and it was back when BBC used to do Grandstand. And
back in the day.
Back in the day, when basically BBC on the weekend was just a sports network. And then in between the football pools, where you'd have like Vauxhall 1, Fulham 0, going really slowly, crawling. So you'd have like that boredom, then you'd have like a couple of hours of snooker where everyone would fall asleep and be like half dead. And then all of a sudden it would be like, now we're at Imola! And you'd be like, oh my god, wake up! And it was just a complete contrast to everything else that was commentated on, or just a different energy level. And that's what drew me in, plus Big Vroom Vrooms. Yeah, I mean, those are my early memories.
I mean, to be honest, you know, the fact that Britain is and has remained such a huge market for F1, I lay honestly at the feet of Murray Walker to some extent.
Agreed.
Because, you know, he got the world feeder same as everybody else, but no one could bring it alive like he could. And the thing is, you know, whether he was alone or with someone else, he was always remarkable. I mean, obviously the clip that's been getting a lot of airtime at the moment is of him and James Hunt, which cracks me up every time I hear it. With James Hunt just live on BBC just going, well, that's bullshit. And the thing is, every time I listen back to Murray and James commentating together, there are moments that make me laugh, But at the same time, I do want to reach through the screen and shake James Hunt and say, stop being such a prick to Murray Walker, you disrespectful arsehole. And actually,
I think that grew over time, though, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, for me, I would honestly say that I enjoyed his partnership with Brundle the most.
Same.
Because they had a sort of bonhomie, and I think Brundle knew how to deal with him better, and Brundle had the same recent experience that Hunt had at the time, but without the arrogance, or not the same level of arrogance, let's say. So I really enjoyed the Murray Martin Brundle years, and I know the two of them enjoyed working together very, very much.
Do you remember the Murray and Martin shows where they would have like their little magazine type thing, and then they would go off and like chat in the paddock on Saturday night between qualifying and race? Or did you not get to see that?
I do. I did remember those, and I loved them. It was a shame that it wasn't something that continued. And something that demonstrated to me is how adaptable he was, because that was really a change of format. And the change as well, if you remember the change from BBC to ITV coverage, and suddenly they had to deal with commercial interruptions. But Murray never missed a beat. When it came back from another fucking Bradford and Bingley commercial, there he was, as if nothing had happened.
And the tricky thing with that as well is that the world feed doesn't necessarily go on a break. So if you've seen other playouts, they then like continue on and then like come back and rejoin viewers, and it's quite seamless that they have to do it. And you'd never have had to have dealt with that before. Just Sam in the chat actually on my side just saying Jonathan Palmer was a bit underrated. I agree. I think he was superb as a technical person. I don't think he shone as a co-commentator so much. I think he'd have been fantastic doing TED stuff.
Yeah, or as an analyst with
yes, Jardine.
Yeah, with Jardine and Rosenthal.
Yes.
Beetlejuice suspects they didn't tell Murray about commercials. To be honest, you'd be a brave man to say...
Stop now, Murray. No! Yeah. Do you remember there was a couple of incidents on ITV where they go to break, and there's one of them, and I think it was in a Canadian Grand Prix, and someone's breaking down as we go to commercial, and you can hear him as the Texaco logo like comes up, and he's going, "Get them back!" and he goes off to a break. It's so funny.
But you see, I mean, that's the other thing, right? It was so infectious, and I think that's why people forgave all the mistakes he made, right? Because you can't fake that kind of love.
You can't fake being a giant fan.
No, and there's a lot of commentators who do fake being a fan, and it comes across. And I'm not saying they're not competent and not professional, but they were nowhere near as infectious as Murray. And all the greatest F1 commentary I can remember is Murray. His emotional turn with Damon Hill winning the '96 championship. I have to stop. I've got a lump in my throat, which I think everyone could feel. The way he handled Senna's death on track. I mean, that Grand Prix is still, for me, quite haunting to watch, knowing what we know now, and also knowing what Murray knew. Because it's not like Murray didn't really know certain things at certain times, but he had a job to do. And his delivery of the Senna death announcement, I'm sure that haunted him forever, but he did it remarkably well. And it's because everything he does comes from a place of genuine love of the sport. I never remember him criticising teams beyond, they've gotten it wrong this year, but he always seemed to hold all the teams with the utmost regard. The same with drivers. As I mentioned in my own personal Murray tribute episode on my YouTube channel, he did say a few things that will probably get him cancelled today. I do remember him referring to Alan Prost as the little frog. And I do recall him using liberally the term the tiny Japanese.
For Ukyo.
Yeah. And that probably would be seen as culturally insensitive now. But, it was a different time back then, and Murray was, if anything, a product of his time. And I think we can forgive him a lot of that stuff anyway, just because of how much he loved the sport. And as I say, that's why people forgive him the mistakes. And he made a lot of mistakes. He did. But you could tell it wasn't from incompetence. And that's the thing as well. Some people, did sort of allude that either he was losing his mind or age or he just was incompetent. But it wasn't. It was excitement. He was in the fucking moment and he was excited, like genuine childlike bounce up and down excitement.
What I'd also say as well, and it's no real comparison, but I do a lot of commentating in the sim racing world, and even in the last 10 years, the way how you have access to information, what's coming through in front of you, you have someone constantly talking in your ear, sometimes 3 to 4 people talking in your ear constantly as you talk out, and you're looking at various data streams. Now, that's what we've got now to deal with. Back then, he would have been looking sometimes through the exact same thing that you see, and a giant text box like CFAX or Teletext telling you a lap time. So sometimes he's got real... He's no, more informed necessarily than you are, apart from him looking out the window. So it doesn't surprise me that he kind of... You have to have your eyes and ears everywhere, and actually that's just tricky to keep going at the best of times, as this podcast always shows with driving and talking.
Yes, driving and talking is difficult. Something I'd like to move on to, if I may, is, and we will get some more memories in and so on, we won't cut the stream too short or anything, but I would like to query your favourite Murrayism.
Oh. I want to steal. I think it might be the same one that you're going to say though.
No, go on, please.
Ukyo Katayama is the finest Japanese Formula One driver that Formula One has ever produced. I think is the one that I'm thinking of. Only because I was a huge fan, and I can't remember the exact words of how it is, but it's basically he says that he is the best driver that Formula One has ever made.
You're right. That is one of my favourite all-time Murray Walker quotes. But I actually have really I was stuck between 2 others. And if you've never grown up with Murray Walker and you've not heard his Murrayisms, I urge you to Google them. But these are things he genuinely said on TV. They were not cut out. So possibly my favourite is that car is completely unique, apart from the one behind it, which is identical.
Yes.
Or after Schumacher's car, I think it was, caught fire, and he said, "There's nothing wrong with that car except that it's on fire." No, what was it? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that car except that it's on fire. God bless him, because it's just something you say without even really thinking. What are his other ones? With half the race gone, there's still half the race left to go. That's indisputably a fact. And of course, this isn't really a Murrayism, but his Damon Hill's the world champion, and I have to stop because there's a lump in my throat. I
think there's a really hilarious one with I think it's Tarquini when he crashes out in a BTC race, and he does an Italian accent. Because the guy that's crashed the car, it's because he's driving for Alfa Romeo, and the lead boss is there, and he goes, that's a Macara, and I'm like, oh my god, I want Murray to voice Mario now.
It's me, Murray.
It's me, Murray Walker. So he's like, that's a Macar, and he goes, yes, too right it is, and I'm like, oh my god. He does a French voice in the same year as well for someone else. It's hilarious. I'll find it and send it in.
Patrick Head won't be happy with that, but then he never is. That's another.
Someone won't be in the Williams garage for the next race.
I enjoyed that one very much because that is incredibly true.
Yeah.
Actually, he's also responsible for the most unremarkable F1 fact ever, because he said Patrick Head's grandfather or great-grandfather was an admiral at the Battle of Waterloo, and it's like, I am not fucking surprised. Knowing what I know about Patrick Head, he comes across as a Victorian-era admiral. So,
This is true.
so when I think back, I just think of Patrick Head as he is, but in like a tufted, plumed admiral's hat, and that's basically what I'm imagining. Like Blackadder. Yeah, and then of course, you know, we also grew up with him as the voice in video games. And
Yes.
the first one, obviously...
Genitraz!
Yeah, the first one obviously was 95, I think,
Yeah.
with the first Psygnosis F1 game on PlayStation. And, yeah, I mean, even though when you listen back to it now, the commentary sounds quite jarring and everything, the actual number of individual sound bites he gave was fucking huge.
Yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds of them because it's got several different versions of him shouting all 35 drivers' names, 13 teams. You've got, oh, the front wing's gone off. He's really charging now.
Yeah.
Schiattarella, and you're like, okay, as it goes on. And fun fact as well, if anyone's still got the game, because I do. Everyone else in all the other languages have also had their commentators recorded. So I used to stick it on to German, and then my mum was obsessed with Gerhard Berger, because it would go Gerhard Berger like that, and she would go around like shouting it at people.
Like she had Tourette's, F1 Tourette's.
Yeah,
In the
didn't
supermarket.
know who Gerhard Berger was, but she was obsessed. And then obviously in the 1997 one, you used to get the Murray and Martin mode, didn't you? Where you could get them to chat on the side with little talking heads. It was a cheat code.
Oh, I didn't see that actually. Sorry, I got distracted for a moment by my phone. But also, Beetlejuice said the commentary on that game introduced a non-English speaking world to watch to him. It's where he got his first Murray soundbites from.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean, even when I've seen like German Let's Players play that game, they play it with Murray on. Olivier Panis.
It's Parnis, and then it's
Yeah.
Panis in the next game where he's been corrected. It's not a parsnip.
It's Oliver Penis. I wish he'd done that. It's Williams number one. Yeah, exactly, Beetlejuice.
Williams driver number one. Yeah.
He's also featured on one of the Codemasters games from recent years. By the way, I'm pissed off that Aaron Barnes got driver of the day when I got fastest lap and went down to 11th and drove back to 2nd. So I don't know who Aaron Barnes is, but fuck him.
He'll never make it to F1.
He'll never make it. No. But yeah,
That's true. Sam's just put in the chat all Martin Brundle used to say was, "You're right there, Murray." That's so true.
Yeah, he did. But he also commentated on the Codemasters game from 2013 or 14. And I saw an interview with someone from Codemasters released, obviously, after the news of the death. I am going to switch up the cars. Let's do a quick mid-90s run, shall we?
Go on then.
Go on then, you cheeky monkey. What are we going to be in, the Williams or one of the Benettons?
We've done a Williams. Should we do a Benetton if I've got it?
Beetlejuice votes for the Williams FW 18. What's your vote, Simon?
Whatever isn't in the Schumacher DLC. Some of the Benettons are, some aren't. So
I think the B195 is the DLC one, because that's the one he won his championship in, isn't it? Mr. Simon?
Yeah, I've become an affiliate because where I do my music distribution through DistroKid, once you get a certain amount of Spotify plays, it gives you free access to go straight in as a Twitch affiliate. So I thought, why not?
Ooh.
There'll be a birthday stream this weekend to test out me going on Twitch. It would have been Senna's third win in a row if he had won the two before. Excellent, great win,
No.
Schumacher smashing into the back of Coulthard in Spa 98 when he's trying to lap him and he shouts, "Oh God, yes!" Rhino, I love the back and forth between him and Brundle. Jerez 97 over Fontana holding up Villeneuve.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, one second. Welcome back, Beetlejuice. I presume that's you. My stream keeps dropping, mate. So if it goes down again, just maybe pop over and join Simon on YouTube, because I think it's just going to keep cutting out on us, but hopefully not. But yeah, please continue, Simon.
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading through what people had put in the chat. And then saying Ralph was playing the white man by not doing the same as Fontana. Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah. He did say that, I remember.
Awkward. Yeah, cool. Let's get...
Okay, let's throw around the Esther Benetton.
Oh, this cockpit's high, or I'm sitting low in it rather. I've noticed this in when I'm playing Race Room at the moment, which I've got really into on PC. I always have to sit and buckle about with the seat and put it up really, really high, because then it makes me feel like I can see further. I don't know why.
Which is not how television screens work, Simon.
No, I know, but it gives me more of the track on the screen and less of the cockpit. But in my head, I always feel like I can go faster. I don't know why.
Well, actually, you say that, but if I can't hear the engine noise in this game, I lose like 5-6 tenths of a second, and I've never been able to figure out why, because listening to the engine note makes no difference at all to what's going on.
Does that mean that you change gear on like the throaty gurgle?
No, I don't think I use an audio cue. Yeah, I don't get it, but it is what it is. Shall we talk now then about Murray's special relationship with some of the drivers?
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that he and Mansell got along very, very well. I won't go too deeply into that, except that I enjoyed very much Murray flicking him on the head when he had that head injury, because it couldn't happen to a nicer bloke. But really, for me, I mean, and obviously we've already mentioned he was close with Hills, and we'll touch on that in a bit as well, but I want to start by talking about his relationship with Schumacher, because that's something that I almost didn't really understand. Because, you know, he was an advocate for the British drivers, he was a big fan of Hill. Schumacher was not only Hill's biggest rival, but he made some pretty dirty moves at different times. But Murray he rated him as the greatest, clearly. And no matter how many times Schumacher did something a bit dodgy, true Beetlejuice, Murray respected the hell out of Michael just like he adored Senna. Yeah, true. I think maybe it's just his love for the sport overrode a lot of his maybe allegiance to British drivers, or I think maybe he recognised the competitive spirit as well that would drive people to do the things that Senna and Schumacher did sometimes.
Yeah, and I think you can separate. I got the impression that you could separate the greatness and respect for some things, and then the ability to say but I didn't like the thing you did. That doesn't mean that I don't necessarily I respect you less, if that makes sense. He would target specific things and then move on from them, but still talk about the person as a whole being good.
Yeah, good point, Beetlejuice. He enjoyed when the dirty move didn't play out versus Villeneuve. That for me is a genuine historic moment in F1 as well that I'll forever associate with Murray. And what?
I associate that almost with Brundle more, because he says you've hit the wrong part, my friend. But I don't think you'd have got that kind of reaction unless you had two people that really got on well together.
Oh, your teammates got past me. I span a lot of power away, though. It's my own fault, because I've turned traction control off to try and be faster, and it hasn't necessarily worked in my favour. He is the Villeneuve to your Hill, Simon. Don't let him get the win, and don't let me get the win.
It's alright, I've got his oil temps sorted for later.
I have to say, these cars are incredibly squirrely.
Yeah, I'm so spoilt with being able to just floor the power down. I'm having to remember how to cadence accelerate, let alone brake.
Okay, with the first lap drama out of the way, or like the first part of the first lap drama out of the way, I'm not going to make a diving attack on the Williams here. I'm going to play it cool. We've got 13 laps and a pit stop still, so...
Pit stop?
Yeah, I have to stop. I don't know about you.
No?
Oh, well, apparently the game wants to punish me. I've been a very bad boy.
Murray has disapproved.
Murray disapproves. Murray disliked this. I also remember, actually, him commentating on Jos Verstappen being barbecued in the Benetton.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
And that reaction is pretty burned in my memory because, you know, it was shocking. It was alarming to everybody, and particularly given that... burned in my memory, badumch, exactly. Not as burned as it is in Jos's, badumch. No. Oh, I'm losing so much time by taking bad lines through these corners, but the car just seems to want to go where it wants to go, which is not necessarily where I'm pointing it. But also when Verstappen was in the Tyrrell, or when he took over from Magnussen at Stewart, because I do remember actually Murray having a sort of sympathy towards Jan Magnussen, but also he sounded resigned to the fact that, you know, it's time to get rid of him. Because, you know, it was. To be honest with you, I kind of expected the same thing to happen to Kevin when Kevin entered the sport, because, you know, he was supposed to be McLaren's next big thing, in the same way that Jan Magnussen was once McLaren's next big thing, and we know it didn't really work out with Jan, and then he went bald, and now he drives a Corvette. So, you know, it really has been a backward slide for the poor guy.
F1's last smoking driver, if I remember rightly.
Yes, he is, and he was a hell of a smoker. Well, still is, I believe. Don't think he's quit. But, I mean, something else that I've been wondering, you know, as I remember now, all the times Murray Walker was commentating on Toru Takagi in a Tyrrell, in a gravel trap, what he would have made of the hybrid era of Formula One. Because I don't think I ever heard his opinions on it, to be honest.
No. I still think he would have loved it. I think he would be... It's interesting because when you look at how close a field is today rather than what it was beforehand, I think maybe where he might have struggled slightly is that the takeover of technology versus being able to make the human difference. And so long as he could still see that there was a human difference in it, I think he was kind of like wowed by technology and found it impressive. but it's the human emotion and spirit that he was drawn to that would be able to bring it out by wrestling those cars around everywhere. So long as there was still the human element to shine, I think he'd be okay. I think he would have much more enjoyed it 2017 onwards, when it started to become big chunky cars, starting to
back on the
sort
slicks.
things out. Yeah. I wonder what he would have thought of. Didn't hear his opinions on DRS particularly.
I'm not sure he would have approved of that, to be honest. I mean, maybe it would have made commentating more exciting in one sense, but I don't think it really would have done overall, because the overtakes would feel artificial. And that's the thing about the era he commentated on. Sometimes there were huge gaps, but everything that happened authentically. But I don't know if that's just my rose-tinted nostalgia, right? Because I'm not ashamed to say I wouldn't be as big a fan of F1 today as I am without Murray Walker. There's absolutely no way. Because he interpreted the sport for the layman, because he was essentially a layman himself, and his love for it was genuine and infectious, and it sucked you in. There's just no way I'd be the fan that I am. And at the same time, you know, I kind of associate him with an era of V10s, V8s, V12s, huge grids, wide cars, fat tyres, drivers punching each other in the face. And all of it seems better. But I don't actually know if it was. And I wonder if that's down to Murray as well. I wonder if the reason we have such wonderful memories is down to his presentation as much as what was going on, because really the field was so spread in those days. And yeah,
10 seconds back to front, wasn't it?
I mean, you get these moments, you know, like the Villeneuve-Schumacher collision, or Schumacher and Hill colliding, or like, you know, some photo finishes here and there, or, you know, I think the most famous Murray clip ever, Mansell's tyre exploding. With Murray's exclamation, which I see on every F1 show at all times. Like, those were genuinely remarkable events, but when you watch back old races, a lot of it is actually remarkably processional.
Yes, yeah.
But still, I remember those seasons super fondly, in a way that recent seasons I don't. You know, like, I was watching a YouTube series about the worst teams in F1 ever, and they did an episode on HRT. And I realised that I remembered HRT, but I essentially blanked all their races from my memory. Like, no, but really, when I try and think of like memorable moments from 2010, 2011, 2012, I think the only thing I come up with is Jenson Button, last to first at Canada.
Preston Maldonado's win.
Even that I forget happened, because it feels like the universe was playing a cruel practical joke. Like, you know, our alien overlords were just tweaking with things to see if we'd notice, you know, like a glitch in the Matrix. But no one questioned it, and then look where we've ended up.
I mean, I will disagree, but I think that might be because I'm slightly mildly obsessed with backmarker teams and all of that kind of stuff. And actually, I think everything up to and including potentially 2013 I was all right with, because it wasn't the hybrid era. But to flip it another way, which to prove your point though, I can't think of Croftisms that I'd actually want to replay back. I can think of, there's a fantastic website that does Brundleisms, which
isn't that usually
enjoy.
him being like a prick to people?
It is him being like slightly grumpy, and but I find that quite funny. I know some other people might not, but yeah, it's him being silly. Whereas like watching Ted be awkward is entertaining in its own little way. I always thought James Allen came across with the same passion for motorsport as Murray Walker did, and just was unfortunate that he was the next person to step into the shoes of someone that is incomparable.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's other commentators I enjoy. I actually quite like Crofty, to be honest. Like, I have an affection. I have an affection for Crofty. He's never going to be a Murray, but I mean, he has sort of, in one sense, taken the place of being sort of that reassuring tone that you hear on a Sunday. Do you know what I mean? But he's more background than Murray ever was. So, you know, I kind of have an affection for Crofty, and, you know, I like Ben Edwards as well, to be honest.
Yes. And that's the only other duo who I rank up with the Hunts, the Hunt and Murray and the Martin and Murray. I did actually quite rate James Allen and Martin Brundle together. Would be Ben Edwards and John
Watson.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Ben Edwards and John Watson on Eurosport. A classic double act. But, you know, I'll take Murray all day, every day. Yes, the grip levels are falling away. How perceptive of you, race engineer. What gave it away? The fact that my arse is halfway round the apex before I am. Is it raining, or have I got cataract?
No, it's just exceptionally grey skies, which happens quite a lot in this game. I've had guys that are really, really dark, and I'm like, I can't fucking see anything.
Cataract in memory of Murray. Speaking of which, I want to talk very quickly about the Frontier F1 management game. Because I'm super excited for it, and they've said nothing about it since they announced they got the license, and it's not coming out till 2022, and I don't think I can survive that long. I need it because you and I need to do a multiplayer on it, and we need to insert. I'm going to get a soundboard with Murray on it because we're going to need it.
Okay.
Because I want you and I to put. I mean, we've driven against each other for over a decade, and you whooped my ass for the first 8 years. I want to see how it is when we step into the management ring.
I think that would be fantastic.
I think it would be really, really good fun, because also it'll be easier for us to talk, which is something we've long struggled with. And, you know, I'll be keen to see what kind of... I hope you can basically add 2 new teams to the grid. But if not, I'm curious to see who you'd take over and how you'd run them.
See, now that there's not a true back marker, I wouldn't be able to pull up my Minardis, and I feel like I wouldn't want to touch Toro Rosso now because it's Toro Rosso, not Minardi, ruining my DNA.
Yeah, I tell you something though. I do kind of hope, again, in memory of Murray, keeping it all tied together. I really hope this rumour that Paul Stoddart wants to fund another entry to F1 comes true. He may actually be. I was thinking about this the other day, and he may be possibly my all-time favourite team principal. No, really, because I was listening to some of the things that he'd said during his time in F1, and all of it comes from a position of a guy who loves racing. Like when you really look at what he's saying and how he's saying it, and you know how pissed off he was at his team getting points in the United States because the race was shit for the fans. Like, I've got nothing but respect for that. Because not a lot of team principals would say that. You know, they'd politicise and they'd obfuscate and everything. And it's just a shame that the Stoddart era and the Murray Walker era didn't really overlap, because I'd love to see Murray interviews Paul Stoddart. I think that would have been fantastic. Yes. Because that's the other thing as well, his interviews, he could always get an interview, couldn't he?
Yeah, and again, that's down to you're not running your own social medias, so therefore he was if you wanted a message to go out, he had the clout and the prowess and the nous of interviewing. Obviously he came from a advertising background, so knew kind of how to sell something and how to sell a person, because you buy people, you don't buy abstract goods or a concept. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. And then he was I think that's also part of why Sorry, I'm rambling, but I think it's because I was trying to get around the S's and I couldn't. Back on track. I think that's also why he was able to stay very approachable and be welcomed in all the garages, is because he's so open and friendly, because that then pays him back tenfold, because people would then tell him extra things and he would be able to get the extra juice in an interview. And people, like, so many journalists these days would be busy selling out their credibility over clickbait items to get more things through, because clicks are what matter. You don't get journalistic integrity like that so often anymore.
No, you really don't. You really don't.
That's why he would be able to stroll into any paddock and be welcomed, because he was there as a fan to sell the person, the story, the atmosphere, and he knew how to do it well. And he was the front door to all the TV screens and the sponsors.
Well, the thing is as well, you know you'd get a fair shake in the interview, right? He wouldn't try and twist your words. There'd be some level of, he would call you out on stuff. Which interview is it I'm thinking of that he did with Schumacher? Was it after he got banned? He got banned, didn't he? Or did he get disqualified from a championship?
94 he did. 97 he got disqualified from.
Yeah, and there was another event I'm thinking of. Was a few from Schumacher's career, right? But I remember
94 he got done for 2 races, didn't he?
Yeah, and then didn't he get black flagged somewhere in a 3-race ban or something?
Yeah, Silverstone, 94.
Yeah, and then I think this was later in his career though, because it was when he was at Ferrari, I think, and I remember seeing a Murray sit-down interview with him during really sort of fraught and tense times, and I even at the time I remember thinking, I wonder how the hell he got Michael Schumacher to sit down with him, because he doesn't want to talk. This isn't a career highlight for him.
Unless it was, mind you, he was already retired by the time they got to Austria 2002. Yeah, I can't think of it.
Didn't he come... Maybe it's that, actually. Didn't he come back for an interview? Because I've seen him interview Lewis Hamilton, so I know he comes back occasionally to do interviews.
Yeah.
And maybe it was the only person he talked to.
Maybe it might have been when he crashed in qualifying at Monaco on purpose.
Yeah. I'm going to look this up. And for an F1 podcast of 11, 12 years standing, I should know this, so I apologise that I don't. But I think it's because there's a few sort of iconic Murray-Michael interviews, and I'm kind of blending them together in my mind. But, he could always get the story, and... he also got insider information and interviews from Tyrrell as well when they got disqualified. If I remember correctly, they were topping their car up with lead shot.
Yes.
To bring it to the right weight.
Yeah.
And they got disqualified when Benetton mechanics found like little lead balls all over their pit box and wondered where they came from, and saw they were coming out of a water hose at Tyrrell. But and like when Benetton got kicked out of the championship, he got an interview. But that was just Murray. Yeah. That was just Murray. And I think also because he wasn't so technically minded, they didn't mind letting him behind the curtain, because it's not like he's going to see a new diffuser or something and know what it means.
Yeah, if you had Karun Chandok rooting around in there, I'd be like, no, get out, please. Because he's busy about to tell everyone in all the world. And also, if Murray did pick up anything, they would explain it to him, as you'd say, in layman's terms, so that he could then give the layman's version of it to make it accessible for F1 fans across the board. And the other thing I'd say as well is that he was such a fan of motorsport. The other reason why drivers, I think, would always open up to him is that he'd probably already seen them in the junior categories and had kind of been a figure in their life right from diddly squat. So Martin Brundle said on his stuff with Sky that he first met Murray in 1982 because he'd come on these weekends down to whatever English track it was to watch like a junior category to see who were the up and coming people, and he'd go and like chat to them and meet them all and be on the fly on the wall. That's how he started knowing about Senna. He would have no doubt done the same with Schumacher. Hill, obviously, he already had that family connection. But all the drivers he was like that. So he picked out like Jean Alesi as a big thing early on. And I remember him talking about like Frentzen was a big one coming up because he'd run junior categories. Panis being Formula 3000.
Yeah.
And all of that. It was all of that different time and era because there was only a few routes for you to get up the ladder. And most of that involved at least one, if not a whole season of racing in the UK. So he was already there in his off season, in his off weekends, mooching around. So you trust those people because you can see that it's to spoil an Oil of Olay commercial. It's not just skin deep.
No, I mean that's true. I mean his depth and breadth of knowledge of the drivers as human beings was remarkable, because he'd often say things, about drivers that often you weren't even aware were on the grid. I remember him speaking about Dominic Chattarella and his career prior to F1, or Marc Genet, and he'd tell you the story about how Marc Genet was an accountant who quit because his passion was Formula One, and everyone said he couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And I love Marc Genet, and he's been a Ferrari F1 test driver till this very day. Can you imagine that? Like, you've been an accountant for like the first 30 years of your life, and then somehow you quit to follow your dream, and it works. Like, I definitely read his autobiography if he's got one.
These books ain't fast enough. Yeah.
Speaking of which, if anyone's interested to hear more about Murray and learn a bit more about him, there is a biography. He's got an autobiography as well, but I recommend the biography. It's called It Was Never Work, which is obviously a Murray Walker quote when asked about his career in Formula One. And he said, for me, it was never work, which I think definitely comes across. Is this the last lap?
Yes.
Thank God, because my tyres are on 70%, and I'm going to have a blowout. And while that would be hilarious and very failcast, I feel like I would have let Murray down.
I feel like we'd need to have played his Nigel Mansell tyre blowout quote over the top of it. That can be a YouTube short if that happens. That's also That's the very first time, I think, that I've got better tyre wear than you. It must be car dependent, because you're always better on tyres than me.
Historically, I have been better on tyres than you, but this car, for some reason, I keep spinning the light in the rears up all the time. So I've been a bit fat-fingered on the throttle, maybe. It's also I've turned traction control off, so it's a bit more sensitive. Whoop, whoop. That is, proverbially speaking, the sound of the police. Well, I hope and would like to wish that was a fitting, if understated, tribute to the great man himself. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to our reminiscences and memories of a guy who was integrally woven into our childhood, and without whom this podcast wouldn't be happening, because I wouldn't give a shit.
I was just thinking, like, what would be a good way to honour Murray Walker in the longer term? And one of the most interesting ways that people do it often is to name a corner after them. And I wonder what corner would be worthy of Murray Walker's name.
Oh, that is an excellent question. I mean, the problem is you'd be sort of left with newer tracks, wouldn't you? But for me, what I'd prefer is to rename the Autosport Award for Murray Walker. You know, the one that gets you a guaranteed F1 test.
Shout. Yeah.
Beetlejuice suggests the start-finish straight at Silverstone. He also says, tell Simon to plug his Twitch channel. So please plug your Twitch channel. And also, it was good seeing you, Beetlejuice. Thank you for popping in.
Yeah, thanks, Beetlejuice. My Twitch channel will be twitch.tv/higherplanegames.
Ooh.
Very, 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 very simple. You'll see the same purple and yellow logo and everything everywhere. So come join the fun.
Yeah, I think something that brings young drivers into F1, I think, would definitely be a Murray Walker kind of thing, like a Murray Walker Memorial Trophy. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think because he was passionate about the up and comers. He was a strong advocate of young drivers. He'd always learn their story, like we were saying, and I can't think of a much more fitting tribute than that, because I can't think of many great corners that don't have a name.
Yeah,
I really can't. Unless we want to name a corner in Vietnam after him, which doesn't seem very fair.
Mannerhouse in the chat has said, is Murray's at Snetterton after him? And I don't think it is. I think it's after a motorbike rider, but I'll double check.
Also, I'd like Pizza Hut to do a Murray Walker Memorial Pizza.
Is that where one slice is facing the wrong way round, or is upside down?
The pizza's twisted in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tongue twister.
Yeah, and we need Damon Hill and Martin Brundle in the commercial.
There's little cheesy. I was going to say cheesy helmets on the crust, but that's something for an entirely different website.
Yeah, I was going to say that's we're into a different realm of territory there, mate.
Bumping us down to earth with a grind.
Oh.
Sorry, everyone.
Well, listen, thank you so much to everyone who took the time to join us. I know it's a bit out of sync, but we both felt it was an event that needed marking. I hope you've enjoyed joining us for our walk down memory lane. The regular Failcast F1 returns 1.5 weeks from now on Saturday, where we will be racing in Canada, and Grand Prix World.
First race of the season as well.
Grand Prix World. If it's not already live on YouTube, it will be live on YouTube very soon. The upload went wonky, so I'm hoping that it's fixed itself while I've been doing this. What's going on for you, Simon? Anything cracking this week?
No, just a couple of game reviews coming out. Got some stuff also coming out over on traction.gg, where I'm doing some freelance work for them, and there'll be the Twitch stream over on twitch.tv/Highplane Games at some point Saturday or Sunday, depending on how drunk I am when I want to play.
Delightful. I love it. Also, I hope to be back up and running on Twitch soon. It's been a difficult few months. I've gone back to the retro setup today, obviously in memory of Murray, and also because I'm lazy. But hopefully I will see more of you guys around. Have a very good one. Take care of yourselves, especially you, Beetlejuice. Thanks for joining, and we will see you all in a week and a half if we don't see you before. Mwah, bye. Love you. Bye. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Bye.